Mistress Threats class.
My name is Parveen Chima.
My name is Monica Galati.
Forget about her, it's all about apples.
Today's topic is about the evolution of Apple iProducts.
One of Apple's iProducts include the iPods. The iPods produced by Apple are the iPod Classics, iPod Nanos, iPod Shuffles, and the iPod Touches. The first ever iPod produced was the iPod Classic, first generation in 2001 with 10 gigabytes. This iPod has its buttons in a circular fashion with a menu button, fast forwarding buttons, and a play/pause button. It also has an on and off switch on the top, and to increase or decrease your volume, you would slide your finger across in a circular motion. In addition to that, there is a screen in which you can see what songs you are playing. For this iPod Classic, there are only two available colors, which are the black and white. The second generation came out in 2002. It looked exactly the same. The only thing that changed was the gigabyte capacity. It improved up to 20 gigabytes. Third generation came out in 2003 with 30 gigabytes. Apple's products did not sell so good in the beginning, but by 2004, when the fourth generation came out with 40 gigabytes, their business started to increase. The fourth generation had the ability to input photos. You weren't able to take the photos because there was no camera, but you were able to input them to look at them. The new fifth generation came out with 60 gigabytes. They allowed you to watch music videos in it. You had the music videos, the photos, and the music all together in one. The last Apple product of the iPod Classic that they produced was the sixth generation with 160 gigabytes in 2007. It was a new improved iPod with all of the other additions to it. The iPod Nano was the second set that Apple produced. iPod Nanos are just like the iPod Classics, but thinner and smaller, and there are more colors to choose from. The iPod Shuffle came out as the third set of Apple's product. The iPod Shuffle came out in 2005 with 1 gigabyte. Its purpose was to only play music, and that's what it did. It had a clip-on, so you were able to put it anywhere you wanted to, and it was perfect for the athletes. This little piece of technology held up to 15 hours of battery life. Its on and off switches were different than the iPods now. The iPod Shuffle goes up to 4 generations and only 4 gigabytes. The last set of iPods in the Apple company are the iPod Touches. The first generation iPod Touch came out in 2007 that held up to 32 gigabytes. This iPod is way different than the iPods described before. It has a home button in the bottom, and its on and off switch was on top and worked with just a click. On the side, it had 2 buttons that gave you the ability to increase and decrease the volume. The first generation iPod has built-in apps that are Safari, the calendar, mail, contacts, YouTube, maps, weather, clock, calculator, notes, settings, music, videos, photos, iTunes, and stocks. It had a touchscreen, hence the word iPod Touch, and the earphone slot is on the bottom. The second generation came out in 2008 with 64 gigabytes. It held the same built-in apps as the first generation. They are made of glass, so they are easier to break, as you can see. Its length was taller than the first. The third generation came out in 2009 with 64 gigabytes. It had the same quality as the first two, but just has more length. The fourth generation iPod Touch came out in 2010 with 64 gigabytes. It had more length, and the difference was that there was now a camera provided. 2 more built-in apps were provided, which was the camera and FaceTime. In this generation, Siri was introduced. Siri was like a personal assistant because you were able to ask her to do things for you. The fifth generation iPod Touch came out in 2012 with 64 gigabytes and was way thinner and taller than the very first iPod Touch. This iPod Touch had more options for colors and had the same apps as the fourth generation, but had messaging as another built-in app. Another Apple product is the iPad. The iPad first generation was out in 2010. The second generation was out in 2011. The third and fourth generation were out in 2012, and so was the mini iPad. The mini second generation and the iPad Air were both out in 2013.
Built-in apps for the iPad are the same as the iPod, but as the iPad progressed, there were more apps added. These apps include Pages, Videos, Siri, Reminders, and GarageBand. Although Siri is not really an app, she's more of a personal assistant.
The last Apple iProduct would be the iPhone, which was introduced into the market in the year of 2007. The last Apple iProduct would be the iPhone, which was introduced into the market in the year of 2007. The capacity options for this particular iPhone model would be 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, and 16 gigabytes. The built-in apps for this iPhone followed the initial iPod Touch built-in apps. The next iPhone that was released was called the iPhone 3G, which was released the next year, 2008. Its capacity options were no longer 4 gigabytes, but all you could have was 8 gigabytes and 16 gigabytes. After releasing the iPhone 3G in the year of 2008, in 2009, Apple released the iPhone 3GS. It contained the same apps as before in the 3G, but in addition to that, they had the compass. The capacity options for the 3GS are the same as the 3G, only they added a 32 gigabyte option. In 2010, Apple released its next iPhone, the iPhone 4. Now this iPhone was basically the same as the 3GS, the only difference was 2 additional apps, voice memos and FaceTime. To use FaceTime, Apple introduced a front-facing camera. With the iPhone 4, they added another color option, which is white. In 2011, Apple released the iPhone 4S. The iPhone 4S was basically the same as the iPhone 4, the only differences were like 6 features. These 6 features include Passbook, Newsstand, Siri, Reminders, Videos, and Game Center. Also, the capacity increased. You could go up to 64 gigabytes now. In the year 2012, Apple released its next iPhone, which would be the iPhone 5. The iPhone 5 was basically the same as the iPhones before it. The only difference was the screen size. The screen size increased to 4 inches, while the ones before it were only 3.5 inches. In the year of 2013, Apple released 2 iPhones, the iPhone 5C as well as the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 5C had 6 different colors: blue, pink, yellow, green, and white. The iPhone 5S had 3 colors: gray, silver, and gold. The gigabytes for the 5S would be 16, 32, and 64. For the 5C, it'd be 8, 16, and 32. It did not go up to 64. iPhone 5S had a really interesting feature, which would be fingerprint scanning.
We asked people around the world about the new iPhone.
मेरा नाम मोनिका है, मैं इंडिया से हूँ। देखो ये कितना अच्छा फ़ोन है, देखो देखो लेना चाहिए, मुझको लेना चाहिए, सबको लेना चाहिए।
Nama aku Parvin, aku dari Indonesia. Aku cinta iPhone ku. Kalau bisa aku mau kawin sama iPhone ku. Mwah!
Call from Mexico today telling us about her in love with the iPhone. Empezó.
Hola, soy Briana, soy de México. Me encanta mi teléfono iPhone, es mi vida. It's not just sweet. Chao.